Good evening and welcome. You're watching Breaking Views with me, Sanket Upadhyay, a show where we get you all the views so that you get the complete picture. Away from the politics, away from all that is being debated and passed on as extremely important for you, is a reality we all live with every day. And we seem to have somehow, I don't know why, normalized this situation. And that situation is pollution. It has increased to a point where something that is supposed to be 5 stands at 250 to 300. Imagine, every morning you're taking your children out and subjecting them to this alarming level of pollution. We have spoken about various pollution solutions, a number of things. Delhi is a known culprit at this time of the year, or the whole of North India. But what if I were to tell you, and let's quickly take a look at this presentation and graphic, that it's not just Delhi. Delhi is not alone. Look at Mumbai's AQI level. That is the air quality index in Mumbai. Almost 100 more, close to 100 more. This figure keeps on fluctuating. And that is why you see that variation. At some point, Mumbai even reached 400 the past 2-3 days. While Delhi today was at a moderate of 152, it was also about 200, 250. Remember, this is a figure which is supposed to be between 5 and 50. That's how alarmingly this rate is high. The PM 2.5 and the PM 10 levels are increasing. We've been debating this non-stop. As we told you, to a great extent, people as well as policy makers seem to have normalized this situation. But do wake up, this is an emergency. Now, there is not all doom and gloom. Some pollution solutions are being worked on. And that is the purpose of this broadcast today. Not just to show you these alarming figures, but also show you that there is one recent study which has been done, which gives some sort of a ray of light. The emission trading scheme. So what is this? It's called the Surat model. Is that going to be a pollution solution? So what happened in Surat? An effort was made, a study was done, and we'll explain what this study is. It reduced particulate emissions by 29%. It lowered the costs of reducing the particulate emissions as well. Imagine, so effective. Not only is it reducing pollution, it is also reducing the cost incurred to reduce the pollution. It increased industry profits, and all of this is a part of a study by the Energy Policy Institute of the Chicago University. Chicago University's professor who led this initiative is going to join us in just a short moment. Now, what exactly is this? You see, this is called the emission trading scheme. This was launched by the Gujarat Pollution Control Board in 2019. It is the world's first particulate trading system which has been launched. Let's quickly load that sequence of graphics on your screen right now. What exactly is this? It was launched by the Gujarat government, Gujarat Pollution Control Board in 2019, and it was the world's first particulate trading system, which means, and now I'm going to explain what exactly is this particulate trading system. So ETS, as it is called, emission trading scheme, let's put that on screen. ETS is basically the government putting or setting a cap on pollution that the industries emit. So the government has decided that this much is what you can pollute. You can't pollute beyond this. Companies comply by installing pollution reducing technology. Companies buy the emission permits if they can't stay under this limit, which means that they pay a fee and they say, fine, we can't stay under this limit, so we are paying this fee to pollute. Firms can obtain emission permit from government or trade with other firms, which means that units with surplus emission permit, that I've taken a permit to pollute this much, but I am actually polluting less. So I can sell my share to other companies that you want to pollute. Here is my permit. I've got this much pollution left in my quota. I give it to you. So this trade is happening. It's called an emission trading system. It's amazing the way this works. And under the ETS, industries can also earn from pollution reducing technology. So if you've polluted less, then it's a sort of an incentive for you that you've polluted less, whereas you had a permit to pollute more. It's a fascinating new system which has actually shown remarkable results in Surat. The Surat model is now being cited by Gujarat. Could this possibly be a brand new form of pollution solution if it is transplanted all over the country? Because the problem is, and that is what we are going to debate, and that debate we are beginning, that there seems to be a race to the bottom by Indian cities. And as we showed you initially, Mumbai is more polluted than Delhi. Indian cities are in a race to the bottom. Can this be, ETS be, the big pollution solution? Because wake up, this is most certainly an emergency. Let me introduce our guest, Bhargav Krishna, fellow at the Center for Policy Research, Sumaira Abdulali, convener of the Awaaz Foundation. We also have Ronak Sutaria, founder of Respira Living Sciences Private Limited, and Siddharth Singh, the author of The Great Smog of India. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. My first question to Bhargav Krishna: do you feel that going forward, this new technology, at least in industrial towns and industrial cities, can be replicated and can be that very effective solution?
Thanks for having me on, Sanket. It's a good question. I think the Surat emissions trading scheme is an interesting pilot, in that I think it's important to point out the fact that it was done for a very limited number of industries in only one sector, which is the textile sector, which is traditionally not considered a significant contributor to air pollution. There arise significant questions of whether this kind of work is even transferable to more politically contentious sectors like steel, power plants, many other industries that may potentially be far more polluting than a textile industry, for instance. But the principle of it is relatively sound. The question is whether market-based mechanisms can function in an Indian state which lacks capacity significantly. Our work has shown that SPCBs, which are the state pollution control boards, or frontline environmental regulators, are significantly understaffed, lack basic technical capacity, and in the absence of an external entity providing significant funds and expertise, like in this case the University of Chicago, it's highly doubtful that such a scheme can be replicated and deployed in many other sectors and across the rest of the country.
Yeah, Siddharth Singh, I want to come to you now. You see, while this is a model, as Bhargav was mentioning, how can this be transported or transplanted or adapted by other industries remains a big question. What also remains a big question is, what do you do in cities where the city does not have any heavy polluting industry? For instance, Delhi itself does not have a super polluting industry. We've got vehicular pollution, our pollution that we ourselves are generating, maybe some industries on the outskirts. This scheme would practically be redundant in a city like Delhi, and we have a huge pollution problem.
Indeed, Sanket, and in fact, first let me just start by agreeing with Bhargav that this is a pilot, but having said that, the pilot has been successful, and now we need to understand if this can be scaled up to other industries, as Bhargav said. Now, while this ETS concept, for the sake of particulate matter pollution, this may be new, but bigger industries, including steel and so on, are used to another form of a trading scheme called the Energy Efficiency Trading Scheme, which is under the PAT scheme of the Government of India, and that has been going on for several years. So for several years, industries have been incentivized, just like for the case of particulate matter in Surat, they have been incentivized to reduce energy use, which in turn has led to the displacement of some form of coal demand and so on, which in turn has had some marginal impacts on air pollution as well. But if as such, the infrastructure to scale this scheme up does exist. And I think the capacity to also execute it might. What could be challenging is, as Bhargav said, the state pollution control boards do not have the capacity right now to deal with the scaling up of such solutions in the country. And this is where it gets a little tricky. And just to take one step back, before we get back, Sanket, is that in the case of Mumbai, close to about 40% of, the particulate matter pollution comes from non-human factors. So there's still a good 60% that can be controlled within the limits of the city itself. Ultimately, we'll need to think a little bit more ambitiously to have a mission mode approach across the nation to deal with the problem, because air pollution does not know state borders. It flows across regions.
Correct. I mean, look at a situation, Ronak Sutaria, for instance, Mumbai. the conventional wisdom dictates that, Delhi has a weather condition around this time of the year where we develop fog, and because of the pollution, wind quality not moving, not much wind speed, and thus we have a situation where there is smog and thus pollution. Mumbai has the sea, Mumbai has the breeze, and yet Mumbai pollution levels over the past many days has been more than Delhi. I mean, this is crazy.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Mumbai had a unique situation in the past week. I mean, we've been tracking it at about 20 locations. The government has around 18 monitors which were working during the week. And we saw that across the board, across all the locations and through the hours, the values remain consistently high, closer to 200 micrograms in PM 2.5. And this is through the day, which is very unusual because usually, air pollution, like temperature and all, has a trend. It rises up in the morning, it dips in the afternoon, again rises up in the night. But at least half a dozen locations, we saw the levels remain consistently at 180 and 200 for about 18-20 hours a day. So that definitely shows that there is something which is not normal in the trend that Mumbai usually experiences. It points to pollution coming from outside for now at least. Having said that, of course, the local conditions, the pollution that the city, generally what we call the baseline level, has remained high through this period. So mitigation efforts were not kicked in, no action. I mean, some amounts would have happened, but nothing at the scale at what was needed. So Mumbai did have a very tough week.
Yeah, Ms. Sumaira Abdul Ali, I want to come to you now. You see, one pollution solution is being spoken about. It is largely for the industry in a pilot stage for one particular industry. But a sense that some people get is that at least this is a solution being spoken about. I mean, the other solution is to live inside a room with an air purifier, which is, very high degree of luxury.
Well, that isn't the only solution, to live inside a room with an air purifier.
True.
Because until pretty recently, that is until post-lockdown, Mumbai never faced this situation. So something has changed in the city of Mumbai, and it's not just the weather, because the breezes have not changed to that extent. In early this year, for the first time, Mumbai exceeded Delhi. That was in January, February. And it was very clear to anyone who lives in Mumbai and can see what's happening around that it's not just industry, but construction, which is leading to this. You can see the construction dust flying out of the sites. You can see the open trucks carrying construction debris. And I think to just say that it might be industry which is outside Mumbai is one way of just not tackling the situation. For example, with the G20 meets which are happening here, the government has announced that they will not pick up construction, which means they acknowledge that construction dust does play a part in the air pollution. Their own studies show that construction dust played a major part in air pollution even before this.
Correct.
And construction has only increased. Therefore, construction dust has exponentially increased. And this is one of the major reasons which trading is not going to help at all, unless we have a real will from the government to do something besides passing it on to industry and telling them that trading is going to work.
No,
Maybe,
but then, Ms. Sumaira, you see, construction and real estate is also an industry, right? This is also an institution. It's and if trading is passed on to this industry, because obviously there are a number of steps that real estate developers have to take, putting up a green curtain, sprinkling water, and you're right, I mean, suspended particulate matter in areas where the dust flies is largely construction debris. Why can't the trading model be implemented on this very, very big and pertinent problem?
well,
We know
I
this is
would
a huge
say-
contributor to pollution in Delhi, particularly, and NCR.
Absolutely. And I would say the trading model might be implemented if the overall, there was some sector here which was doing business and actually remaining behind. But already the air pollution level in Delhi was high, which is made only, in Mumbai was high, which is only made higher by the construction. So I wonder where we are going to trade and who's going to actually reduce. It might mean shutting down some types of industry. But yes, if that is the solution being offered, that some industries might not be able to operate, I can see that it might work.
I'm very happy that at least we are having a discussion not on the blame game, but perhaps on the possible solution, and debate the solution and not the problem, which is something I personally like doing. Thank you very much for your time and putting things in perspective. And now for the professor who has written this report and has seen and observed the changes in partnership with the Gujarat Pollution Control Board from the Chicago University. I'm happy to have Professor Michael Greenstone with us. Thank you very much, Professor Greenstone. Would you like to tell our viewers, we've explained in a nutshell, what exactly is this Surat, Gujarat ETS model?
Yeah, the Surat ETS model is one that takes as its starting point that markets can be useful in achieving both environmental and economic goals. And the way it does that is, rather than prescribe to industry, you must do this, or you must install this particular piece of machinery, or you must do that, it asks industry, it gives industry a broad goal, and then says, you figure it out. Find the cheapest way to get this reduction in pollution. And the way it does that is by creating a market in emissions where people effectively have to pay to pollute. And so that's that. And this kind of style pollution market has been used in many other places around the world and has been very successful.
Now, Professor Greenstone, can it practically be implemented elsewhere or in other industries?
Yeah, so let me explain what happened in Surat. The way it was set up is an actual experiment, like you might test for a new drug or a COVID drug. And 150 industries were placed into this new pollution market. They were randomly chosen. And 150 were continued to be regulated in the standard way by the Gujarat Pollution Control Board. And this was a really innovative step by the Gujarat Pollution Control Board, and they deserve an enormous amount of credit for this. And what happened is, over the next few years, those plants in the emissions market were tracked, and the plants in the status quo were tracked. And the plants in the emissions market reduced their pollution by 20 to 30%. It was really an enormous reduction in pollution, and they kind of achieved it through their own innovation and their own creativity of finding new ways to reduce emissions. And in addition, these plants also reduced the cost of compliance with environmental law went down by maybe about 15%. And so you have what is really kind of like a very sharp counterpoint to the idea that environmental goals have to be in conflict with economic goals. Here you had an experience where these plants, primarily textile plants, were able to both make more money and the people in Surat were able to breathe cleaner air. It was a rare win-win. So coming to your question, based on the experiences in the United States, based on the experiences in Europe, based on the experiences in many other places, and now based on the experiences in Surat, we have very compelling evidence that these markets can work at achieving these dual goals of economic growth and cleaner environment.
It's interesting that you mentioned these international experiments and experiences. Would you like to tell us what the experience has been internationally to make this into a sustainable pollution solution? How much have we drawn from the Indian experiment and vice versa?
Yeah, so in perhaps the most famous example comes from the sulfur dioxide market in the United States that was started in the early 1990s. And there they were trying to solve the problem of acid rain. And people said, oh, it's going to be too expensive to do this. We have no way to do it. And what the U.S. government did was set up a pollution market or for sulfur dioxide where plants were effectively had to pay to pollute, so they faced a price every time they polluted. And you saw a very sharp reduction in the cost of compliance, much sharper than people had predicted, because they hadn't. When you start these markets, the engineers who run these companies, both in Surat and in the United States, are very smart, and they come up with clever ways to reduce pollution that is much less expensive than they had realized before. So that's really a excellent example. And I think there was a question. Certainly, our counterparts, our partners at the Gujarat Pollution Control Board wondered, well, can this work in India too? And now we have very decisive experience. The highest level of evidence that exists in the world with these randomized control trials. And I think there's a very compelling case. And, I'll pause, but I just want to point out, I think there's an opportunity for India to implement a national sulfur dioxide cap and trade.
It's an interesting point that you mentioned, because that was about to be my next question. And the Gujarat Pollution Board, you say, has led the way with this initiative, and you've studied the effectiveness of this scheme. How about applying this as a national scheme, particularly in the two main pain points in this country, Delhi and Mumbai? Delhi particularly.
Of course, yes. I'm in Delhi right now. I think there is, so the government set out an NCAP program, I think in 2019, where they had promised or set goals of reducing particulate matter air pollution by maybe 20 or 25% over the course of the next several years. And that has been tough sledding, achieving those goals. I think there's been important progress. But what is left, I think, on the shelf, or what is now on the shelf after the Surat experience, is to use a pollution market to achieve that kind of all at once across the country, rather than building it out city by city. And I think the way to do that would be to set up a sulfur dioxide market, just like the United States did in the 1990s. And you wouldn't have to do it over that many plants or industries. You could do it over largely electricity generators. And we have done some simulations and exercises that suggest that if you were to do that, you could achieve the NCAP goals at quite inexpensively. And that would be a way to both achieve the government's important goals of reducing air pollution while also fostering rapid economic growth. And one thing that I forgot to mention that from the Surat experience that came out was we were also able to look at, well, what would happen if Gujarat had even tighter controls than they do. And the striking finding, really dramatic finding, was how inexpensive it would be to achieve really substantial reductions in Gujarat if one continued to rely on markets. So I guess the point is, we now have a very sharp tool on the shelf. It's been verified and validated in India, and I think it's just sitting there waiting to be used.
Well, a message perhaps for the policy makers, because they often come under criticism, and rightfully so, for just waiting for the wind speed to pick up and take away the pollution. Well, here is the solution. We can start work on it. Professor Greenstone, many thanks for joining us. Short break right now. News and updates continue on the other side. Stay with us.